that beautiful thing with the whale on it?
Yes.
Okay, that is the one at Beluga Point. And if you have not pulled over on your way to Girdwood or to Seward, you should. And it's a beautiful poem. Oh, good, I can make it large. I'm not going to read it because I want to jump into our program. But Kim worked with Wendy. Wendy and Emily Wall, who was also invited tonight, but had something else going on, to do this project. Wendy, how many did we end up having? You know, poems in place at the roadside, mainly throughout Alaska. You say a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think there's 2 poems in each district that the state parks has parks. And I believe, I can't remember now if there's 9 or 11 poems, and they're really distributed across Alaska. And Kim was in with me on the initial kind of conjuring it up, huh, Kim?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we had some good talks.
You were involved in the original dreaming it up. Yeah. Awesome. Very cool.
Kim was also on. There was a wonderful board of poets and writers. He was I think you called yourself the oblong poet or something, because everybody else was in Alaska. He was in Oregon, but we welcomed his.
Yeah, but I think was John Straley involved in those early conversations?
He was involved in the early ones, but he's in Ketchikan, so at least he was kind of in state. It was a great project, and if all of you happen to be out tromping around, I hope you happen upon a poem or 2 here and there.
Well, I came to know who Kim was kind of through Paul Hader when we were doing some publishing about some of Paul's writing. And then Paul was writing about you in an essay, and you had submitted at the same time, I don't think knowing the other was there. So I was able to publish them together, and it was just delightful. But this came around now, this thrill of having you here, is because John Morgan was our poet, our local poet, our local featured poet about 3 months ago. And he had chosen William Stafford as his poet of influence. And I invited you to arrive that night, but I did it really on short notice because I didn't want there to be any pressure. Like maybe you couldn't make it and that'd be okay, but you'd surprise everybody if you could, and that was really neat. But that's what made, when you responded, that's when I realized we could, because of Zoom, we're not stuck in geography. We actually could have, John up there from Fairbanks, and now you from Oregon, and even people online sharing this with us from different places. And, I'd like each of you to write in chat your name and where you are from. That'll save me going around and asking each one individually where you're from. And if you would all do that right now, and then in just like about 5 seconds, I'll say, hit it, and then everybody can hit it at once. And we've got sort of a cascading Zoom of your name and your location. And I am looking around too, because I happen to know the first reader after Kim is Tyler from Colorado, and I don't see him yet. But I have started the recording, so I'm on track for something. So go ahead, and hit enter, and then we can see all at once where everybody is. So thank you so much, Kim, for agreeing to be our featured poet tonight. I want to make a couple announcements before I give it away to you. One of them is that in January, finally, Kathleen Tarr is going to be able to curate and present the Poets of Eastern Europe that she had planned last spring before COVID, as a tribute, the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II. And then that couldn't happen face to face. Now she's worked out that we will be able to do it online. But We will not do that on the 20th of January because what's happening then?
Yay!
An inauguration, yeah. So it'll be a week later. That must be the 27th. And I'll send out notice about all that. It's going to look really fancy. And she's got a lot of surprises involved with that. I want to say also about Cirque. The issue is out and up on Amazon now, and it's also on the cirquejournal.com webpage where you can actually read it. A couple of very small corrections need to be made, so I'm not filling any orders, not right away, but I will, but that should be done just within a day or two. And then we are on the verge of building Cirque number 22, of which Paul Hader is the editor. Wave your hand, Paul. You're here somewhere.
I'm right here.
Yeah, there you went. That's we've got a special theme.
The land ethic, Aldo Leopold.
In January, we will be putting that together and it will be out by February. What I also wanted people to know, because some people have submitted and they're wondering what we're working on in terms of deadlines and all that. The work that's going into that issue met the deadline of September 21st. And then going backwards, the other deadline is March 21st. So those are submissions that came to us in that 6-month period. We're playing a little bit of catch up because we changed designers, but now we're right on top of it. So we'll have another issue out pretty quickly after the one that I'm talking about now, number 21. So with that, and I see TJ is here, Alt Shift on the bottom, so we're very good. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Kim.
Thank you, Sandy, and thank you all for tuning in. It's good to get together around the fire here from wherever we are. And I'm going to do something a little different with this reading. Before each poem, I want to give a writing prompt so that it's possible that out of this, you'd have a lot of optional homework that you could take to your practice. And this first poem, well, first I want to say I've had a few lucky times to be in Alaska. I worked on a place called Ninilchik Dome on the Kenai in 1968, the summer. I was in a remote station up there. I was out in Bethel a couple times to teach at when it was Kuskokwim College still. Worked in the elementary school there a little bit. I taught a workshop in Anchorage. I can't remember who invited me. Joe Sanunkatuk invited me to his native village, Kingakin, up north of Nome. And then I was at the Kachemak Bay Writing Festival. And this poem is not by me. It's by an Inupiat man, Winton Wayapuk. And he wrote it in the workshop we had up at Kingakin or Wales. And so the writing prompt is to describe something outside yourself, something you see that's outside yourself, and then something inside yourself. So something in the landscape and then a feeling or a memory or a fear, something inside yourself. So this is called The Edge of Tomorrow by Winton Wayapuk. I walked past a small flock of young pintail ducks who showed no fear of me. And I remembered my childhood and a world to explore with complete trust of no harm from anyone. From the top of Cape Mountain, you can see tomorrow on the Russian coast. And yet I have no idea of what tomorrow may bring. The cranberries are growing and will soon ripen. In this workshop, idea of how to reinterpret my life have taken root. Fish nets trap salmon going north. I read poems that capture the hopes and dreams and fears of people. The shoreline divides the land from the sea. Without either, my life would be so empty. Winton Wayapuk, very wonderful, wonderful man. Okay, this next one, the prompt is write about a time you can't explain. I kind of like that idea. And this is from actually a little essay that I've submitted to Cirque about my time on the Nilchik Dome back in 1968. And it just, I was up on this remote station, 15 miles inland, no road, dropped off by helicopter with a partner up there, Wendell. And we flipped on the generator and sent the radio signal out to Cook Inlet so they could, pinpoint the grid of where they were setting off shots to figure out what was happening under the seabed, where the oil was.
Oh.
And so toward the end, this describes one night. So write about a time you can't explain. I remember one particular night when there was no moon and I went outside to see the dark sky. Scanning the whole horizon, there were only a few distant lights. Here and there, a twinkle to the west, and the sky a glorious inky black. Salted with stars so thick, they seemed to rustle against each other. As I craned my neck in witness, I couldn't help laughing from sheer exhilaration. It was primordial. I was seeing what the first people had seen. In the presence of that sky, I felt original, aboriginal. I was on the old earth before we began to ruin it. I was privileged to see the original magic of Eden. When I came back into the hut, Wendell asked what I'd been laughing about. I tried to explain, but I failed. All these years later, I don't know if I could explain. I was in the presence of something holy there, older than names or words. So when I was Poet Laureate for a couple of years, May of 2018 to last May, to prepare, I went to the reading of my predecessor, Elizabeth Woody, who's a Wasco Navajo Native person. And she said something very important. She said, the more I do this, the less it's about what the poem is, and the more about who the poem serves. And that really became my mission as Poet Laureate, who the poem serves, who's the poem for, who could the poem help? And so when the pandemic began, I decided to write and post a poem every day on Instagram. And you can find that on Kim Stafford Poetry on Instagram. And so I've, in this year, 2020, this amazing year, I've had a suite of poems on the pandemic, a suite of poems on protest for justice, a suite of poems on fires. We had a lot of fires down here. And then a suite of poems on the election. And so I'm putting out a little book called Seeing 2020. It's going to have poems from those four. So I want to read one from each section, again with a prompt. So this time the prompt is, this is the pandemic section. What keeps you buoyant when times get hard? Write about that. That's writing for someone. That poem's going to help someone. So what keeps you buoyant when times get hard? And this poem is called Oregon Dawn in Spite of the News. So, early morning, Oregon Dawn in spite of the news. Before I can get to our statistics, so many stricken, so many dead. I'm summoned by the birds raising a ruckus outside. Crows and jays in festive outrage, trill, chirr, and aria of the little brown birds. The mournful dove, the querulous towhee, rusty starlings in their seesaw mutter, and a woodpecker flicker, hammering staccato on the gutter. On the porch, I'm assaulted by the merciless scent of trees opening their million flowers as I inhale the deep elixir of hazel, hawthorn, maple, and oh, those shameless cherry trees. And just when I've almost recovered my serious moment, I gasp, helpless to see the full queen moon sidling down through a haze of blossoms. So that was the pandemic. And You know, one thing I tell my students, if you write something every morning, it may not turn out to be a great text, but it will be a better day. It'll be a better day. You can compose a better day. So then, you know, the protests started, and Portland was kind of an epicenter for violence, all kinds of protest and counter-protest. And this time the prompt, your optional homework, write about the protest from a child's point of view. You know, so much has been said and then counter-said, and somehow poetry can get oblique from the established divisions and look at something in a different way. So write about the protest or write about politics from a child's point of view. This is called White Flag Patriots. The children went first because they had the most to lose. No color, no emblem on their flags, no shouting, surrendering instead as they shuffled toward the White House, some crying, some stern, a few singing lullabies their mothers had taught them. And in the Rose Garden, where men were speaking into microphones, the children lay down on the grass to watch the clouds drift west until the speeches trailed off and only the wind was heard. Then white flags flashed in the wind as the children rose and sang together, "You have overcome, but we are not afraid." Well, then Labor Day came, and first the smoke, high wind, dry skies, and terrible fires. You know, hundreds of homes lost. And you just knew when you saw the smoke, that is the smoke of creatures. That is the incineration of forests. You know, that is the ash of birds, you know, flowing past the house. And we all prayed for rain. So this is called In Fire Season, Rain. And again, I think, you know, when trouble comes, who does the poem serve? You know, how could a poem help your neighbors get through it? I'm trying to remember who said early in the pandemic, science will get us out of this, but art will get us through this. In Fire Season, Rain. The soft smoke of hard rain, drilling down through tree bones, the hiss and steam of quenched fire, rain nipping flames root, gray mud of ash. Rain tap slapping your hat, rain gloves, rain making your coat heavy, your neck cold. Rain washing what was seared, culled, fallen, lost. Where fire fed, rain, offering rest, restoration. Rain turning eye salt to rivulets, rivulets to rivers, wheresoever many weep as one. Rain thrust deep in earth, seeking seeds. Rain taking its own sweet time. Earth's thirst for first rain, never to be cursed again. Oh, we love the rain down here. Now even more than ever. Okay, so the fourth section, you know, pandemic, protest, fires, and then the election. And when I'm making this little book, Seeing 2020, you know, I have 19 poems on the pandemic. I have about 23 on the protest, 18 on the fire, and then I have about 60 on the election. I just could not get it out of my head, maybe because I'm being hammered by the news. But again, I tried to find an oblique way to go at it. And I remembered a wonderful Middle English poem called The Owl and the Nightingale. The narrator in the poem says, you know, I went out in the night and I heard the owl and the nightingale having a big argument. And the owl was saying to the nightingale, first the nightingale says to the owl, why are you so moody? I mean, you're just brooding all the time. You just have no sense of humor, lighten up. And the owl responds by saying, oh, easy for you to say. You just fly off to the sunny south when things get hard. Come on, buck up. You want to be English. And so they argue back and forth. So I thought, I'm going to have an argument between two birds. Okay, which should they be? Well, red states, blue states. I think I'll have a cardinal and a blue jay. And I'll just do a call and response. So the prompt this time is write a call and response. Have one voice say something and then the other voice say something back. So this is, and this was written after watching that extremely dysfunctional first debate. I just thought debate doesn't seem to be working here. So the cardinal debates the jay. The crimson cardinal perched on the topmost branch of a twisted pine, the blue jay a bit below, and they both fluffed their feathers. Mm-hmm. This top branch is mine to keep, the cardinal said. Your flock of riffraff can't change that. And if they try, we'll ask the owls. I believe in the long migration, said the blue jay. In a different time to come. Have you given no thought to the fledglings? You and your far horizon, said the cardinal. I believe in this branch now. So beautiful. Everything else, rumors and lies. Look down, the blue jay said. Oh, say, can you see the sparrow, towhee, nuthatch, flicker, heron, thrasher, swan, the raven, crow, the robin, and the wren? I seem to default to nature. Nature is such a teacher. It's really got the long view. Well, is this what we're supposed to be doing, Sandy and Caitlin? Are we doing okay?
We can do whatever we want.
Oh, yeah, that's right. It's a free country. Well, I'm going to read a couple poems from my forthcoming book. It's called Singer Come From Afar, and it's coming out in April from Red Hen Press down in California. And the prompt for this first poem is write to someone with whom you disagree, but in a winsome way. Mm-hmm. Write in an engaging way to someone with whom you disagree. So this one started when I was talking with the Poet Laureate of Washington State, Claudia Castro Luna, who is an immigrant from El Salvador. And she told me that she went home to visit her father. Her father's not well, and it was a difficult, in fact, a dangerous journey to land at the airport and get to the remote location where her dad lived. And when she was driving back to the airport after the visit, she came around a corner in this ravine, this jungle ravine, and suddenly it was so beautiful. She'd been driving past so many things that had been destroyed by the wars and violence, crime. She came into this ravine and there were butterflies and, the light was filtering down, and there was a woman sitting by the road selling little jars of honey with her daughter on her lap. And so Claudia stopped and she bought a jar of honey for her children. And everything was fine till she got to Houston. And then the customs agent took the jar of honey.
Oh.
And when she told me this story, I decided I'm going to write a poem for Claudia, but it's going to be addressed to the customs agent, So this is called For the Customs Agent Who Seized Claudia's Jar of Honey from El Salvador. Para probar, she said. Taste it. Let it sizzle on your tongue. Take it home, smuggled in your dark pocket, and with a spoon, drip to the tongues of your children slow sips of joy, so they may know how sweet my country once was, in spite of war and sorrow. Mm-hmm. Tell them about the ravine of flowers the soldiers missed, but the bees swarmed, humming and humming, zumbando y zumbando. Remind them how a mother could sit by the road with her daughter in her arms and a few jars of pure gold. how my coins and her brown hand meant enough this day. Even though her man was gone, even though your law would take this elixir from me, even though there will always be war, but always flowers, bees, mothers, and your children. And if you have no children, if you do not wish to think of war or my country or the woman by the road, still, I beg you, taste this honey. Let the sticky song of 1,000 bees give your body the oldest, deepest pleasure. Do not lose your chance to know how sweet my country once was, in spite of war and sorrow, a pesar de la guerra y el dolor. So a poem, a poem for someone. A poem for someone. That I think that's the most important optional homework I want to give you. Think of someone in your life who needs a poem, and then write a poem for that person. And they will not say, has this been published? Or what a great poem. They will say, thank you. And poetry will have fulfilled its primordial purpose. Okay, next prompt, write a poem for a creature. For a creature. Okay. And this one happened when I got an invitation to contribute a poem to an anthology to protect the orca pods in the Salish Sea. So a poem about orca, the killer whales. So write a poem for a creature. Earth totem. Dorsal cedar dressed in moss where the village stood. Crest carved fresh and proud, the clan not yet defeated. White on black, the color of starlight, high and old, glittering where the sea's back breaks open. In the strait, their formation, ancestors could use to teach children the ways of courage, certainty, persistence. Thriving where king salmon thrive, the throng charging in their own endemic wave through waves, splitting the eternal, binding what flows, braiding salt to salt, in a shape the old ones carved in stone, up from the hidden, forth through the hungry, diving, secret, swallowed by the sea. Who will lead us into the future, if not these? Who will teach us high respect, if not the whales that prey on whales? Who among us can dance like that, in storm or cold, diving through shoals of silver where all the little lives glitter in beautiful fear? Hold honor of ancestors in our keeping, destiny of children, eel and clam, eagle and heron, bear and frog, all the woven hungers, nourishing us by their vigor, their abundant life. How can we meet our children's eager, brimming gaze if we let the orca essence falter, barren, hungry, gaunt, if our pod of treasures dive, never to return? Okay, I think I'm gonna do, Sandy, one more poem and then the little film. Is that about the timing? Okay. Yeah, I want to read a poem for my wife, and this one started when I got an email from a colleague at work, and with email you can see when it was written. It was written at 2 a.m. Never a good sign. And this is what my colleague said. Kim, in the wee hours of the morning, it struck me I am in need of a poem, a prescription that could hearten me, hearten my soul, and give me some strength to face these days. Do you have a heartening poem you could recommend? Something that through humor or empathy or drawing on spirit brings a little light and hope? No worries if not. Sharon. So I stayed up all night and made a book for Sharon of poems, of consoling poems, and this is one of them. And it's the assignment this time, the writing prompt, Write a poem for someone you love, telling about how what is hard intensifies your love. So a poem for someone you love, telling how what is hard intensifies your love. And this is called My Wife Wakes Me at 3 a.m. to Tell Me She is Overwhelmed. Not for joy did we marry, but for this. To hammer through the to-do list in the dark, despair shared, one to lament and one to listen, knowing nothing can be done before dawn, but still the quiet aria, fierce prosecution of the self. As I say, what can be done will be done in time. For soon the tide will turn, days will bloom and fade, impossible imperatives will shrink to their true size for her, but rise as a tidal wave for me. And in the night cast down, I will be the one lamenting to my bride at the dark heart of my defeat. And she will tell me all is well in the dance we do for one another. Okay, so years ago, 50 years ago, I studied Old English poetry. And one of the wonderful parts of Old English poetry are the riddles, where a creature speaks in the first person, and you're supposed to guess who it is. And this is how you got through a long winter night, I guess, in a stone building in England. And that idea seized on me of speaking for a creature, speaking to a creature, speaking in the voice of a creature. And so this is called Lessons from a Tree. And I want to read the poem and then show a little film. And the film, it happened, I was teaching a class and we were going around introducing ourselves and, you know, what do you do? What called you here? What do you hope for in this class? And one of the students said, well, I play harp in hospice. You know, when people are past speaking, I put music into them. And I said, oh, Bethany, would you bring your harp to class? And she brought it to class, and then for the next session, music was our prompt. She would play and we would write. And so I invited her to come to my readings then. And, you know, while she played, I would read a poem. And then I made a little film. So I'm going to show that in a moment. So first I'll read the poem, then show the film with the poem and the music. Lessons from a Tree. Seed split, root sprout, leaf bud. Delve deep, hold fast, reach far. Sway, lean, bow, loom. Climb high, stand tall, last long. Grow, thicken, billow, shade, sow seed. Rise by pluck, child of luck, lightning struck survivor. Burn, bleed, heal, remember, testify. Nest, host, guard, honor. Fall, settle, slump, surrender, offer, enrich, be doth, enough.
Great.
Here's the film.
Lessons from a Tree. Seed split, root sprout, bud leaf. Delve deep, hold fast, reach far. Sway, bow, lean, loom. Climb high, stand tall, last long. Seed, thicken, billow, shade. Grain, ring, grow, sow seed. Whine, sing, flicker, glimmer, rise by pluck, child of luck, lightning struck, survivor. Hollow, glisten, witness, seed again. Remember, testify, thicken, burn, bleed, heal, seed, learn. Nest, host, guard, honor, savor, seed again. Fade, groan, sag, crack, split. Soften, slough, grip, gather, then arc, swish, sail, fall, settle. Log, stump, slump, sag, surrender, offer, enrich, be duff, enough.
Well, that was really cool. Thanks for sharing that, Kim.
Yeah, my pleasure. Well, thank you all for listening to poems, and I'm going to be after you if you don't do your homework.
Yeah, any of you that want to write poems on the prompts that Kim mentioned, they are in the chat, so make sure you are checking that. So do you want to tell us about Ruth Stone? Is it that time?
Yeah, I think it's that time. Well, you know, Ruth Stone, she's an inspiration to especially us older writers, because what was she, like 84 when she published her first book? You know, that alone is inspiring. And then it's great work. You know, she had a tough life early on. She didn't really have resources. She worked in the fields, a lot of manual labor, but she would be struck by a poem. She described to Elizabeth Gilbert how it would come rushing toward her. She could feel a poem coming like a storm, and she'd have to run as fast as she could to the house to get a pencil. And if she didn't get there fast enough, it would go on to another poet, she said. It would keep going. Sometimes she would catch it by the tail and write it down backwards. And it would be perfect, but it would be backward. And then she'd have to retype it forward. So, you know, this sounds mystical, but who knows? Maybe it's available to all of us, and we're just too busy to listen. I think I'll just read one poem because I want to leave a lot of room for people. And the prompt, I'm going to give you a prompt for Ruth Stone's poem, is go into a magic story your parents told you and write it with abundant sensory detail. So a magic story your parents told you and bring it to life. And when I look at her poem, there are three parts. She sets the scene, and then she tells what happened, and then she ends with an image. Always a good way to end a poem. I think Stanley Kunitz said, end with an image and don't explain. You know, if in doubt, cut off the moral of the story is kind of ending, just end with an image. And her image, I have to say, is a certain color of blue made popular by Theodore Roosevelt's daughter. It's called Alice Blue, Alice Roosevelt. Okay, so this is Ruth Stone. In an iridescent time, my mother, when young, scrubbed laundry in a tub. She and her sisters on an old brick walk under the apple trees sweet rub-a-dub. The bees came round their heads, the wrens made talk. 4 young ladies, each with a rainbow board, honed their knuckles, wrung their wrists to red, tossed back their braids, and wiped their aprons wet. The Jersey calf beyond the back fence roared, and all the soft, dry swarms about their pet buzzed at his big brown eyes and bullish head. 4 times they rinsed, they said. Some things they starched, then shook them from the baskets 2 by 2, and pinned the fluttering intimacies of life between the lilac bushes and the yew. Brown gingham, pink, and skirts of Alice blue. So that's Ruth Stone. Thank you all. I look forward to hearing more Ruth Stone from all of you. And thank you, Sandy and Caitlin, for letting me share my poems.
Thanks, Kim.
Thank you. That was wonderful.
We have been blessed with your presence and your poems. Okay, so I will share the program for you guys real quick, and then a couple of things. So, TJ and Caitlin will be up first. And if you were here last time, I compiled the poems ahead of time so I can share them on screen so we can read along with the text as you read. Okay, TJ, take it away.
Okay, first of all, thank you for making me go right after a poet laureate from a state.
Builds character.
It does, it really does. Secondly, I got him on Instagram and he's got 100 times the followers I do, and I have a cute dog. So, incredible. All right. As Real as Life by Ruth Stone. Say to the mild melancholy of regret that seizes this Sunday afternoon, I will not let your charm be sullied by those tears that wet. The first 10 years from June was my birthday, likely from then. Until I can remember, Sunday was slow, like a praying mantis climbing up an oak. And tears, like tea, had formal cause to flow. I will not regret the stereoptic world, seen through Sunday windows, baffled by depths that overlap dismay. But I will say, I have seen many a photograph, as real as life, and I have saved a clipping about mountaineers who froze.
So we did have a poem for the other Caitlin. Do you want to read that instead?
Yeah, I'll read other Caitlin's one.
Okay.
Good Advice by Ruth Stone. Here is not exactly here, because it passed by there 2 seconds ago, where it will not come back. Although you adjust to this, it's nothing, you say. Just the way it is. How poor we are with all this running through our fingers. Here, says the devil, eat. It's paradise.
Thank you. And next we have Sandy, followed by Paul.
Such a sad poem. Another feeling. Once you saw a drove of young pigs crossing the highway, one of them pulling his body by the front feet, the hind legs dragging flat. Without thinking, you called the Humane Society. They came with a net and went for him. They were, matter of fact, uniformed. There were 2 of them, their truck ominous with a cage. He was hiding in the weeds. It was then you saw his eyes. He understood. He was trembling. After they took him, you began to suffer regret. Years later, you remember his misfit body, scrambling to reach the others. Even at this moment, your heart is going too fast. Your hands sweat.
That is a sad poem. I read it quickly the first time, but thank you for sharing that. Okay, Paul, you're up.
How's that?
There we go.
Yeah, so when I was teaching in El Paso, I had a summer gig working with high school students in an anti-gang activity program. And ironically, I used to teach The Wound and Alice Walker's Beauty When the Other Dancer is Self. I don't know if you know that essay, but it's about her being a beautiful girl in the South. Her kid brother shot her eyeball with a BB gun by accident, and she went from a self-confident beauty queen to a girl with a silver patched over blind eyeball. And she eventually got an operation after she became a poet. So The Wound is important to me because I still work with adults that have many wounds. And I think this is a powerful, powerful poem about living with that wound that we all have, many wounds. The wound. The shot comes slowly as an afterthought. First you hear the words, and they are like all other words, ordinary, breathing out of lips, moving toward you in a straight line. Later they shatter and rearrange themselves. They spell something else hidden in the muscles of the face, something the throat wanted to say. Decoded, the message etches itself in acid, so every syllable becomes a sore. The shock blooms into a carbuncle. The body bends to accommodate it. A special scarf has to be worn to conceal it. It is now the size of a head. The next time you look, it has grown 2 eyes and a mouth. It is difficult to know which to use. Now you are seeing everything twice. After a while, it becomes an old friend. It reminds you every day of how it came to be. Bruce Stone.
Thank you, Paul. All right, I believe I am next. So, yes. Okay, and then after me is Eric, followed by Wendy Brooker, and I will post the list there. Okay. So this is Genesis. Cylinder sacks of water filling the oceans. Endless bullets of water. Skins full of water, rolling and tumbling as we came together. As though light broke us apart. As though light came with the rubble of words, though we die among the husks of remembering. It is as we knew it would be, in the echoes of endless terminals, in the slow-scaled guises of ourselves when we came together in the envelopes of ourselves, the bare shadow, the breath of words invisible. As slight errors repeating themselves, as degradation passes like madness through a crowd. It was not ordained. It was one drop of salt water against another. And on to Eric.
First of all, I'd like to say thank you, Kim, for introducing me to Ruth Stone. I wasn't familiar with her and quite amazed. Okay. Eden, then and now. In 29, before the dust storms, sand blasted Indianapolis, we believed in the milk company. Milk came in glass bottles. We spread dye-colored butter, now connected to cancer. We worked 7 to 7 with no overtime pay. Pledged allegiance every day. Pitied the starving Armenians. One morning, in the midst of plenty, there were folks out of context who were living on nothing. Some slept in shacks on the banks of the river. This phenomenon, investors said, will pass away. My father worked for the daily paper. He was a union printer, lead slugs and blue smoke. He worked with hot lead at a 2-ton machine in a low-slung seat. A green-billed cap pulled low on his forehead. He gave my mother $1 a day. You could say we were rich. This was the jazz age. All over the country, the dispossessed wandered with their hungry children, harassed by the law. When the market broke, bad losers jumped out of windows. It was time to lay an elegant table. As it is now, corporate paradise. The apple before the rot caved in. It was the same worm eating the same fruit,
Mhm.
the same Eden.
Thank you, Eric. That was great. Wendy, you're up.
The first one is peripheries. This circle holding the afternoon sky is a lake for summer business, measured in stacked pairs of peeling oars, whose dinghies all ship water. Beside it, on the trampled grass, a carousel shakes and turns on an old world instrument. The plink and plank and tinkle of a tune of plunging horses in fresh habiliment. We catch the reins of enamel Pegasus and lift the child until she is astride a purple beast, where, wrapping infant arms about his neck of wood, she whirls in space and gallops off upon the turning wheel. The horse climbs steadily the silver pole where cherubs hang, then slides toward spinning earth. She sees the moving heaven of winged babes, rising to meet them, rising. She returns to where our faces, staring in at hers, fixed, while her orbit whirls and sunlight burns, recede to artifact as her vision blurs. Putting up new curtains, other windows intrude, as though it is that first winter in Cambridge when you and I had just moved in. Now, cold borscht, alone in a bare kitchen. What does it mean if I say this years later? Listen. Last night, I am on a crying jag with my landlord, Mr. Tempesta. I sneaked in 2 cats. He screams, "No pets, no pets." I become my Aunt Virginia, proud but weak in the head. I remember Anna Magnani. I throw a few books. I shout. He wipes his eyes and opens his hands. Okay, okay, keep the dirty animals, but no nails in the walls. We cry together. I am so nervous, he says. I want to dig you up and say, look, it's like the time, remember, when I ran into our living room naked to get rid of that fire inspector? See what you miss by being dead.
Thank you, Wendy. And next we have Linda Lucky, followed by Brenda, followed by Heidi. So Linda, it's all you.
All right. At 83, she lives alone. Enclosure, steam heated, a trial casket. You are here. Your name on a postal box. Entrance into another place like vapor. No one knows you. No one speaks to you. All of their cocks stare down their pant legs at the ground. Their cunts are blind. They barely let you through the checkout line. Have a nice day, plastic or paper. Are you origami? A paper folded swan, like the ones you made when you were 10. When you saw the constellations lying on your back in the wet grass, the soapy pear blossoms drifting and wasting, and those stars, the burned out ones whose light was still coming in waves. Your body was too slight. How could it hold such mass? Still on your lips the taste of something. All night you waited for morning, all morning for afternoon, all afternoon for night, and still the longing sings. Oh, paper bird with folded wings. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. On to Brenda.
Okay, always on the train. Writing poems about writing poems is like rolling bales of hay in Texas. Nothing but the horizon to stop you. But consider the railroad's edge of metal trash, bird perches, miles of telephone wires. What is so innocent as grazing cattle? If you think about it, it turns into words. Trash is so cheerful, flying up like grasshoppers in front of the reaper. The dust devil whirls it aloft, bronze candy wrappers, squares of clear plastic, windows on a house of air. Below the reedy edge in last year's mat, red and silver beer cans, in bits blown equally everywhere, the gaiety of flying paper and the black, high-flung patterns of flocking birds.
Thank you, Brenda. Heidi.
You hear me?
There we go.
Hola. Okay, so I am reading The Fleet and another one, The Fleet. Each night upon the bed's dry sea, his tibia wrecks upon her knee. Great homing boats, they flounder there. His iron sides jut athwart her hair. In thickest fogs that drown his roar, move singly toward a diverse shore, and roll and founder side by side, the mighty groom and ancient bride, with boom and bell and warning blast, guideless and starless, mast to mast. Okay, this is how it is. The sensible living aren't interested in the dead unless there's money in it. So little you can do with them. What they say is in your head. They visit in dreams, but turn their backs when you beg them to stay. They are never hiding in your closet. Empty jackets, loose sleeves yawn on the hangers. Their cold feet that they rubbed and rubbed with their long, sensitive fingers before they put on their socks never come back with their fine fitted bones to warm your bed.
Thank you. Okay. All right. So we have Steve with 3 and Cynthia with 2 to close out the people signed up tonight. So Steve, take it away.
Steve, alias Diane. The ailanthus tree says tree of heaven, but the reason it's called that is because it grows so quickly. But it's a problem because it grows quickly and inhibits or kills other plants. So it's kind of like a noxious weed in that respect. Also, it has a pungent odor like rancid peanut butter or burnt rubber, so I'm told, or so I've read. It also has male and female plants. It's not just asexual reproduction. So my challenge in reading this and trying to understand it, and I still need a little help on it, is to whom does Satan refer in this poem? And so it has some percolation throughout. So maybe it's more of a synergy kind of thing, and you're supposed to just get a feeling out of this as opposed to a direct correlation of things, hence an experience. Experience. Satan, I came across the iris bed to where you sauntered by the eucalyptus tree. Alanthus, tree of heaven, bordered the wall. Blue is the iris where the eyes you turned to me. Ah, were the heavens so tender as the arch of shade below the glittering blue? The warm winds fade. The snow lies deep and indestructible. The earth cuts back and bends the graver's spade. Creature of light and pleasure, there in the branches overhead I heard you singing. Blue were the wings you spread, blue is the air. And I came wrapped in my living shroud to hear you sing of caves of snow where diamond suns light up the diamond whiteness of the dead. Relatives, I really like this one. It reminds me of one of my own grandmothers. This is about one of her grandmothers. Relatives and other people. Grandma lives in this town. In fact, all over this town. Grandpa's dead. Uncle Harry's brain dead. And them aunts, well, it's grandma you have to contend with. She's here. She's there. She works in the fast food hangout. She's doing school lunches. She's the crossing guard at the school corner. She's the librarian's assistant. She's part-time in the real estate office. She's stuffing envelopes. She gets up at 3 a.m. to go to the screw factory. And at night, she's at the business school, taking a course in computer science. Now you take this next town. Grandpa's laid out in the cemetery, and Grandma's gone wild and bought a bus ticket to Disneyland. Uncle Bimbo's been laid up for 10 years, and them aunts are all cashiers in ladies' clothing. And Grandma couldn't stand the sight of them, washing their hands and their hair and their pantyhose. It's marine world for me, Grandma says. Gotta love Grandma. She's on the move. It's not over yet. Words. Now, a little, just tiny bit of prep. Wallace Stevens is a prominent 20th century poet. I've read some of his work. Personally, for me, I don't really care for his work that much. He's a little too self-satisfied and, I don't know, a little abstract, deliberately abstract, a little campish in that respect. That's just me. So at any rate, apparently Ruth Stone doesn't like him that much either. Wallace Stevens says, a poet looks at the world as a man looks at a woman. Them's fighting words. I can never know what a man sees when he looks at a woman. That is a sealed universe. On the outside of the bubble, everything is stretched to infinity. Along the blacktop, trees are bearded as old men, like rows of nodding gray-bearded mandarins. Their second-hand beards were spun by female gypsy moths. All mandarins are trapped in their images. A poet looks at the world as a woman looks at a man. I like that one.
Thank you, Steve. Cynthia, you're up.
Shapes. In the longer view, it doesn't matter. However, it's that having lived, it matters. So that every death breaks you apart. You find yourself weeping in the door of your own kitchen, overwhelmed by the loss. And you find yourself weeping as you pass the homeless person, head in hands, resigned on a cement step. The wire basket on wheels, right there, like stopped film, or a line of Vallejo, or a sketch of the mechanics of a wing by Leonardo. All pauses in space. A violent compression of meaning in an instant within the meaningless. Even staring into the dim shapes at the farthest edge, accepting that blur. And the question, while needles of the evergreen practice a windy chaos, heads of snarled hair, something in the tree longs for old age. Bald brown knobs of skull without subterfuge, but it continues with its greedy, resinous sexual odors. The odors rise against one another, spurting away from the scaly bark. Along its fingers, the tree holds out microscopic traps. Popping bullets of sunlight crack into the subliminal orifices. And the tree thinks, how exquisite is this love?
Thank you, Cynthia. Back to you, Sandy.
Saves me a lot of embarrassing remarks that no one heard. So we have finished our program and we are not too bad. What is it, 7:18? A whole night ahead of us. I always like to invite everyone to stay after a little. It's not even so late. Like to introduce a few people who maybe did not read. I had mentioned Karen Shannon before. Very nice to see you. We've been working to get the Zoom thing happening many times, and now we have it. She's here with us. I know almost everyone knows Karen, and so I know you're delighted to see her too. It was her poetry that inspired Cirque Press to publish a book and to become then a publishing company, because listen to her words. And then, and at the time we were in the adult sex shop, a long story, but it turned into the writer's block, a bookstore and restaurant, but originally it was the adults only sex shop. And that's where we were. And her book was the first, and it's apportioning the light, and sometime soon we'll get her to read some work out of it. But that was the inspiration, and now we've nearly published 20 books in 3 years, and I think we are probably producing as much as Red Hen Press, or maybe at least the Borealis imprint of that Peggy Shoemaker's involved with. I'm not even sure of that, but I'm proud of us. Me and Burwell, who was too tired tonight to come on to here, because he's grading papers. He teaches a technical writing class for the University of New Mexico. Anyway, so there's Karen, who some people are here who I don't know or haven't seen for a while. Jen, why did you introduce yourself and the children?
Hi, I'm Jen Stever. This is my daughter, Renette. I live in Anchorage. I just finished my MFA with UAA in fiction. I have a micro chapbook that came out this year from Kissing Dynamite. It's called In Milk and Cookies. So yeah, I think I have a copy here. And I also write fantasy fiction. My thesis and novel, Lost on a Fire, won a Jason Wanger Award this year. And I just found out tonight I got nominated for a Pushcart Prize from by Alaska Women Speak. So.
Very good. Awesome.
Did a beautiful reading recently.
Thank you.
Oh, was that part of that one with Ray Ball's launch of her book?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Oh, I was there. That was there virtually, like we all are everywhere. So let's see, who else would like to say a word or two? I don't like to sort of like pick on it. I could say Sandra Wassley, our most recent book, The Dream That Is Childhood, finally up and perfect. You can find it on Amazon. We're going to have a launch between now and that time in January where we do the Poets of Eastern Europe. Between there, on the 29th of December, we're going to launch the new Cirque and Sandra Wassley's book and Sean Ullman's book, which is called Seward's Soundboard. That's going to be a really fun night. And I think that's good timing, you know, between Christmas and New Year's when we're all at home and there's nothing to do. So I hope you'll plan to be with us then. That'll be great. Say a few words, Sandra.
I have been enjoying this evening, and I was really happy to meet and hear Kim Stafford and hear Ruth Stone poems. I had a long time ago had heard her, and that image of her running through the field to capture the poem is just embedded in my mind, and it really makes me think that when something inspires me, how important it is to sit down and write it. And I'm really have become better at the morning practice, not every morning, but most mornings of sitting down to write, even though sometimes it's gobbledygook, but I think it gets me to what is meaningful. So a few comments about my process. I'm still waiting for Amazon to clear its presentation of the book, but the book itself is done, and I'm waiting for my order of books to come, and it's just seem to be slowly getting the word out to people, but that's what I'll be working on this month. The book is my Christmas present, and I really am very thankful to Sandy and Michael and Janet and Emily for all their contributions and putting together a very beautiful book. Thank you.
Sometimes our designers finish books and then they quit. That's not the case with Emily. She found it a wonderful process, and she's ready and willing to do another book. Karen, would you like to say a few words? I went right off to someone else before giving you a chance to say something. You're on mute now, so you'll need to unmute first.
There we go.
Oh, good. Okay.
It says mute on it now, so that's why it confused me.
Yeah.
What was it you wanted me to say or do?
How about
my leader? She's my glorious leader.
What are your thoughts and feelings about the evening?
Well, I mean, it went a lot more smoothly than I thought it would be, and I don't look like the old hag from the West, so I'm happy. I just, this is my first time out, and I've been very resistant. But yeah, this is pretty nice. I really like this. I had time to take notes and everything. It was very nice. Yes, and thank you, Kim Stafford. My goodness. Yes. Yes.
Karen, you're funny. I like you.
Yeah. It's nice to be liked, I tell you. At 83, you just don't feel like there's people out there that even know you exist, let alone like.
That sounds like that poem that Linda Lucky read.
Yes, I was thinking that when Linda was reading that. I said, oh my goodness, I love this poem. As a matter of fact, this is a discovery for me. Our now I can't even remember her name. Isn't that terrible? This is my problem these days.
Ruth Stone, finally committed to my memory.
Ruth Stone, and I don't know why I have never read her before or even heard of her, but I am about ready to go forth and look up an awful lot of her poems. I love her, just love her. Yeah.
Now, John McKay here is, he's my fellow student, fellow alum from the MFA at UAA program now. Going down. Same one Jen just graduated from. So yeah.
Hey, Sandy.
But yeah, you want to say something, John?
Just real quickly. And I apologize. We have somebody who's just getting out of quarantine and having her first dinner tonight. So I have to run. But I did want to say if you haven't already said this I have on my calendar that there's a memorial service for Sherry tomorrow. and I don't know if anybody, and I'm not on Facebook, and I'm guessing that it's probably a Facebook thing. So if those of you who are friends of Sherry Simpson's, I think Dave Stevenson and some others were organizing a memorial service for her. And if I'm right, it's if my calendar's right, I put it on there a few weeks ago that it's for tomorrow night. So anyway, I didn't mean to inject a somber note, but she was sparkly enough that just talking about her is brings some pretty happy memories back. So.
Okay, good. Peter, are you behind your name? So John, you think probably the information about that would be on
Yes, I am.
Oh, here's Peter.
Yes, I am. What do you want to know?
Say hello to your friends and give some thoughts about the evening.
Well, it was a great evening. Caitlin, I think you did a great job. You're kind of like a master. In fact, the word that came to mind is fabbro, and fabbro is an Italian word. So, okay. So it's the word that T.S. Eliot used when he dedicated his poem, The Wasteland, to Ezra Pound, and he called him Il Miglior Fabbro. And I think he meant the better poet, but fabbro is actually a word that means smith or blacksmith. And so I think of it as a deviser, as a maker, as someone who's got this hands-on quality, and you did a masterful job this evening. I love the fact that you put the poems on the screen. I hope you'll do that next month too. And that was really great. I wish that all the poems, the ones read by Kim and Ruth's poems, will be somehow available to us if possible. After this, but anyway, that was great. It was a great evening. No kidding. I love Sandy. I hope
Peter. Go ahead.
I hope you will start at 6 o'clock all the time. It was fun having it start at 6. This way, I'm not eating too late.
Oh, maybe so. Maybe so. Hey, Peter, why can't we see your face? We already know you're bald.
Oh, okay. Wait a minute. I have to sort of. Wait a minute, can you see me now?
No, you have to turn on your little camera down in the left-hand corner.
Oh, okay. There
on the lights.
Take the little thing on.
Okay, there I am.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So there you go.
That's better. Peter,
Anyway, so yeah.
An actor, a journalist, has an interest in the Aleutians and ADAC. Yeah, glad you're here.
I am too.
You know, who else would like to say something, some feedback or something? Cynthia, how about you? I don't need to orchestrate this, you know, you could talk among yourselves.
Well, I'd never been introduced to her before either. So after surgery this morning, I decided to tune in. I could do it. Yeah, I'm really happy to be here. I wasn't expecting to be, so I'm happy to hear each one of your voices. It was wonderful, and I really enjoyed her work. So thank you for the choice of it, and also, of course, the featured poet. It was lovely. Thank you.
For people who were interested in the Sherry's memorial, Jen posted the link to the meeting info on. There's going to be a Zoom celebration, so it's in the chat if you want that information.
I didn't quite get how you download the chat file. No, that's
so it's right next to the file button. You click the 3 dots and it says more, and then you click save chat.
Mine doesn't say that. Oh, yes, it does. It's saved to some mysterious place. Okay, so speak up. Who wishes to speak?
I'd like to say one more thing. This is Karen. This is Karen, and I want to say one more thing. As I have never met John Custer, and since he has a last name that is the same as my maiden name, I was just curious because I've never met him, and of course my eye popped right on the name. Only mine had an umlaut. I imagine his at one time did too.
Oh, hi.
Karen.
My name actually never did have an umlaut, which we used to think it did for the longest time, but my sister did some research and found out that it didn't. And while I'm talking, I'll go ahead and introduce myself and say my name's John. I pronounce it Coster, and it's my first time here. And I really enjoyed the poetry by Kim Stafford and Ruth Stone. And I want to thank you all, this community, for existing. And thank you for, this was great, a way for me to spend this evening. I'm glad that I got to be here.
Well, I'm coming back again, so I'm hoping that John Coster comes back again. So there you are.
John, did you say you're in Anchorage or?
Yeah, I'm in Anchorage.
Are you, by chance, since we're talking about relatives, are you related to Dave Coster? He works for Fish and Game?
Not that I know of.
Okay. Because, like,
I don't
honestly,
have Alaska.
okay, well, looking at you, I wouldn't be surprised if you guys were related, so I guess not.
And that first reader was my son, TJ Clevin, in Louisville, Colorado, the sweetest little city in the world. You want to say anything else, T?
Sure. We were talking about German, and I got a good trivia question today. See if anybody can come up with it. I came up with it very quickly because I'm a weather nerd. What do you call hail that it bounces off the ground? It's not snow, it's not hail. It's a German word. Starts with a G.
I have no idea.
And you know it?
All right, 3, 2, 1. Grapple.
I've heard of it. I forgot it.
Also,
that's so random.
It's a grapple. It's
perfect.
I played trivia tonight, and I was like, oh, German. Oh yeah, I heard German word for something that drops off the ground and hits the pavement and bounces up. Grapple.
I'm going to put John Coster on the spot and tell you that I think he translates literary works from German to English or vice versa.
Oh, dang.
Whoa.
But I didn't know the word grapple, so it doesn't matter.
I thought it was a food. I thought it was a cereal.
Who wants to say something before we go? You can just jump right in.
I'd just like to say, Kim, that I really appreciated your poetry. I really liked the way that you have a prosaic and yet poetic quality. It's one thing to have lyrics, like a song, and everything rhymes and so forth, but to actually manage that in a prosaic style, I think is it's much more influential, because it catches you up in a stream, in a flow, as opposed to quick little sound bites of rhyme, and so it's just being caught up in the flow of your words that makes it easier for me to catch the meaning and the experience of it. And I really appreciated that. So my next step is to go out and get some of your poetry and really start to get into it. I appreciate that. Thank you.
One time my dad said to me, he came into the room and he said with a big sigh, "Oh, Baroque language. First Annie Diller did it, now everybody's doing it." And I said, "Well, Daddy, that's kind of what I do. You're one of the worst."
Oh, that's great.
And I take that as a compliment. He was saying to me, "You're different from me."
Oh, yeah.
So thank you, Steve.
Well,
That's very
yeah,
kind.
you're welcome. I have a tree and yet still in the same orchard.
Well, what I liked, Kim, was the many ways you engaged with the audience, the listeners, and there was a lot I could learn from that in how to do some things better or different, and even how I could write some things better and different. Because I like the connection you created, so that being modeled for me makes me think about doing that.
Well, thank you very much. I say about my 40-year teaching career, any skill I may have results from years of going to class unprepared, where I have to rely totally on the students, lean forward. Hey, what have you guys been reading? Oh, do you like that? Tell us about that. Interview the class. So to me, that's the pleasure of life, to lean across the fire and, connect.
I got a question for you. Mr. Stafford, if I can call you Mr. Stafford.
You can call me Kim.
You can just call you Kim. Okay,
Yeah.
Kim.
Yeah.
How did Kate Brown find you? How do poet laureates happen in Oregon?
I applied 3 times.
Okay, so you apply. It's like a
the way they do it in Oregon, you apply, people send letters, you propose how you would like to serve. That's a big part of it. And it's a 2-year term, and so my turn came, I guess.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Well deserved.
Well,
yeah. Well deserved. Absolutely.
Well, it was, it's not an honor, it's an opportunity to serve.
Sure.
That's really the way it is. Where I went around, like I met a kid at the community college down in Albany, and he said to me, he was the poet laureate of the community college. First of all, I love this idea that the English faculty got together in the spring and they said, well, let's pick a student to be our poet laureate next year. So they picked this kid, and he told me something that also became my mission. He said, I don't write poems to become a better poet. I write poems to become a better person.
Dang.
I love that. I really love that, So it's a practice that belongs to everyone. Yeah. Clearly to all of you. I'm so privileged to be in your company. Thank you.
Thank you. Jean, I see you. Do you want to speak up about anything? You never know that it was really the person who's behind the...
Well, it's a great pleasure to hear Kim Stafford read. I remember hearing his dad read twice, once in Sitka, and I guess 3 times, once in Sitka, once in Mount Vernon, Washington, and actually LaConner, Washington, and once in outside of Washington, D.C. in Maryland. And one thing I remember about your dad, and I was happy to see as you were reading and talking, is that you both share the same smile.
Oh, yeah.
And that's always good.
Yeah.
And I always remember the great smiles that your dad had for people who had questions for him.
Yeah.
He would always start his answer with a smile.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Anyway, it's nice to see you. And it's nice to see my old friend from Sitka, Don Muller, lurking in the shadows there. Anyway, thank you very much for the reading. It was a wonderful evening.
Kim, do you know, remember the story, Emily Wall, meeting your dad and then later discovering the poem and thinking, oh my gosh, this poem is about our meeting and I didn't even know it. We published that story, I believe, in the last Circ. Emily had written it out, and we it as a really wonderful essay.
Yeah, well, just briefly, the story, the last project my dad did was a couple forest rangers called him up from the Methil Valley and the North Cascades of Washington. And they said, we make these signs along the road that say things like, the valley before you was sculpted by ice 10,000 years ago. Well, that's great. But what if instead the sign said, sometime when the river is ice, ask me mistakes I have made. Ask me if what I have done is my life. What if there was a poem beside the road? Would you write some poems for us to put along the North Cascades Highway? So my
Ooh.
dad sent him 30 poems, like that. And one of them was called Emily, This Place, and You. And it was about young Emily Wall, who had come to him and they had talked, and he's mild, he was so kind to her. She never forgot it. And when we did the Poems in Place in Alaska, her poem was chosen. And it's reminiscent of my dad's poem, and it's a beautiful full circle. So I'm glad you published that story.
Right. But the thing that she only, like the poem had already been published in a book. She opens the book, sees the poem.
Yeah.
And then all alone, she's wondering, could this be about me? And then, getting further into it and establishing, indeed it was.
Yeah.
So if you haven't read that, I believe it is Cirque 20, the one that most of you have in your hand.
Bill Stafford also wrote a poem about our junker gremlin car that I once picked him up at the airport in, and the car made such a big impression that he wrote a poem about it.
Yeah, well, I left that off my list, John. Write a poem for a person, for a place, for a tree, and a car, especially a gremlin.
That reminds me that also on our publishing list in the future with Cirque Press is a collection of letters to Rachel from John Haynes's last 2 years of his life. Again Comes the Owl, that we will be working on also in 2021. And we've gotten a lot of support from this group and elsewhere to make that happen.
Yeah.
So thank you. And also, we, Cirque and Cirque Press, were nominated for one of the Governor's Awards in the Humanities. I found that later from Carrie Feldman, who sent me the nomination yesterday. Said, you didn't make it, but we put that in there. Very cool. Yeah, that was really a really nice thing to hear. So anybody else? I guess I think we're losing our numbers a little bit here, but that's fine, because then it's less people, easier to talk. Anyway, I think we don't want to take advantage of people pulling you longer than you intended to stay.
It's dinner time.
But yeah, it's dinner time. And so thank you, everyone. With that, we'll just say good night and thank you, everybody.
Good
And
night.
especially
Thank you.
thanks, Kim.
Thanks again, Kim. Appreciate it.
Night. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. That was really fun.
Nice to have you here, T.
Yeah, absolutely.